So my name is Leslie Zigel. I'm an entertainment attorney here in Miami. Do music, television, film, technology. Have some nice clients such as Pitbull, Carlos Vives, we've seen the Wailers, as well as some technology companies like DJ City and others. And I've been in this space now for quite some time, and we thought it would be interesting to talk about music technology companies, how they get funded, how they get started. And so joining me on my panel are going to be Jeff Ransdell from Rocker Fuel and David Packows from Singular Sound, who's the inventor of the Beat Buddy, which some of you may have heard about. So the way we're going to do this is Jeff will go and say a few words about himself, then David will do it, and then David's going to do a demo, and then we're going to get into a conversation about the birth of the Beat Buddy. Jeff?
All right. Very good. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday to everyone. I took my mic off the stand because I know this is a festival, so everybody thinks I'm going to play guitar, but I'm not. So my name is Jeff Ransdell. I'm the managing director of Rocker Fuel. It's the largest venture capital firm east of California and south of New York. And really what we do is we identify amazing talent and entrepreneurs that are really making the world a lot better place, making the world a lot easier place to operate in. People like David. And so that's what I do for a living, and we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. But really, I'm going to turn it over to David, who's the reason that he's in the middle of the three of us. So we'll turn it over to him.
All right. So should I tell the story, or how do you want to work it?
Yeah. Why don't you do a little demo first, and then we'll tell the story. I think that'll be cool. Let's get a little music going.
Yeah. So I created a little gadget called the Beat Buddy. That was my first creation. It's a drum machine in the form of a guitar pedal. It allows you to control the beat with your feet. Trademark, by the way. And I created it for myself, and we'll go into the whole story of how that happened. But I'll show you guys how it works. And I also created other gadgets that work with the Beat Buddy, and I'll give you guys a little demo with that. With the Beat Buddy, I'm just going to play the drums, so I'll demonstrate how it works. The Beat Buddy is meant for solo artists who have a hard time finding drummers, which is pretty much all solo artists, myself included. I wanted to create something that you could have live sounding drums that's not just a backing track, that you could interact with, more like a musical instrument, but is still easy enough to play, so you don't have to take your mind off of your instrument, off of your singing, so you can still concentrate on your main musical talent, but still have drum accompaniment. So I'll show you guys how it works. It's this little pedal here. You guys, I don't know if you can see it very well. It's down by my feet. We do have a booth right on the other side of this building. We're Singular Sound, like it says on the shirt. So if you guys want a closer look at our products, feel free to stop by our booth. You guys could try it out yourself if you're a musician, or just touch it because it looks nice. So I'll show you guys how it works. To start the beat, you just tap the main pedal right here. So you see it comes in with a little intro, just like a real drummer would. Now you could jam along, right? And this will keep on going and jam as long as you want. Whenever you want to mix up the beat, you just tap the pedal, and it throws in a little drum fill. Now, every drum fill is different, so it's not like a repetitive robot. And you could control how long or short those fills are. If you do it in the beginning of the measure, it'll play for the whole thing. And if you do it at the end of the measure, it'll just play, so you can control how long it is. So that gives you a lot of granular control while you're playing live. Now you're in your verse, right? You want to go to your chorus. All you have to do is hold the pedal down. Does that little transition fill? And now the beat just changed. So you can move the drums along with your music, hands-free. To go back, it's the same exact thing. You just hold it down, and you could keep on holding it down as long as you want, and it extends that transition as long as you want. You could use this to do a bridge, and when you let go, you're back where you started. So the drums are dynamically controlled just by a tap or a hold. So the controls are simple enough that you could concentrate on playing while still controlling the beat. We also have this little extension pedal, this foot switch that connects to the Beat Buddy, and that gives you additional controls. The left button here does accent hits. So watch. And you can make that any sound you want. It could be a kick drum, hi-hat, cowbell. Can never have enough cowbell, right? Am I right? Yeah. And then the other button is pause and unpause. And unpause. So you could do like a drum break. Right? What I like to do is, to do a little fill and bring it in with a fill. So you have a huge amount of variation and control just by those simple one tap and hold controls. Of course, the Beat Buddy comes with, this is just one beat, it comes with 230 different styles built in, but it comes with computer software, so you could make your own beats and put it on there, you could download other people's, put it on there. We have a very active community that they create beats and upload things, but we also have drum sets. So you hear right now it's a regular sounding drum kit on this beat, but I could change the drum set that the beat is being played on, so check it out. So that's the same beat, but now it's being played on hand drums. So this is really nice for like an acoustic set, you're doing something at the coffee house, right? But if you want to bring the energy up, now we went to an electronic kit. So now you just went from the coffee house to the club. This is my personal favorite, a human voice, so you can jam along to your very own beatboxer. And then to end the beat, you just tap it twice, and you're done. So you have your live controls right there. Thank you guys, appreciate that. So that was our first product. We created a few other products that all work together synergistically with the Beat Buddy. Our latest flagship product is called the Aeros Loop Studio, and for those of you non-musicians, a looper is a device that will record your music and play it back in a loop. Now there's other loopers on the market out there, but they were very, very limited. I started playing with the loopers when I started using the Beat Buddy because people were using them together. And the loopers, other loopers on the market are very difficult to play because they don't have, you kind of have to like imagine the music in your head. It doesn't have a screen, you can't like see your music like you would if you're recording on a computer. So what we did was we combined a digital audio workstation, like the software that you record in the studio where you see all the waveforms, and put it in a pedal. So it made the looper a lot more powerful and a lot more easier to use as well. And we made it syncable to the Beat Buddy so you could have not only your drummer, but your backing band right here. So I'll give a very short demo. I know we want to get into the rest of our conversation here, but I'm going to show you guys how the looper works together with the Beat Buddy. So check it out. And please forgive my playing. There's a reason I'm not on the stage. All right, so check it out. Oh, let's do a normal drum set. Yeah, this is a Phil Collins inspired drum set. If you could hear that, that's very Phil Collins style. So you hear, I just recorded a loop, and it's just going around and around. Now I can add another layer to it. So now I've got the two layers. Let's say I made a mistake on that layer, I want to bring it back, I just hold the pedal down. And you see that layer just disappeared. I could also bring it back. I could replace it or bring it back. So you have a lot of hands-free control while you're playing. Now you could do a different track, which is a different length than that first one. This one is, if you listen to it, it's 4 measures, right? We're in the last measure. And I'm gonna do a shorter one, so it's gonna repeat while this one is playing. So you hear that is going twice every time the other one is going once. Now, in a first for any looper, you could do song parts in this looper. No other looper in the world can do this. So you could have different sections of the song, like your verse, which is this, and your chorus. So now I've got my other one, and as you see, it changed when I changed it on the Beat Buddy. They're synced together. Now if I change the Beat Buddy back to the first one. So you could have up to 6 sections on the looper and up to 6 parallel tracks. So you could create massive accompaniments for yourself and be a complete one-man band. You got your drummer and your backup band. And right here built into the looper is a little wheel where I could control the volume hands-free. And you could also control the individual tracks hands-free as well. And when you stop the Beat Buddy, it stops the looper as well. So there you go. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of this device. You see these wonderful, beautiful devices, and they're on sale at music stores all over the world. You wonder, okay, how did we get here? And everyone has their own story. And Michael McDonald earlier was talking about the resilience of musicians and how they go and take situations and turn them around. So have any of you seen a movie called War Dogs? Okay, so War Dogs was about 2 Miami guys who stumbled upon a way to become arms dealers and brokers, and they ended up selling hundreds of millions of arms to the US government. And there was a movie made about it starring Jonah Hill and someone else, and there were 2 characters in it. Jonah Hill was kind of, the leader, the asshole, loudmouth who went and did this, and he brought a high school friend along who was a little bit more sensitive, played guitar, and kind of thought, okay, this is a good business, let me get into it. And by the way, that second character was none other than David. Now, if you saw the movie, you saw that they, got into some trouble because there were some Chinese bullets that they weren't allowed to do with their government contracts, so they ended up getting arrested, and they were fortunate, or David was fortunate, that they ended up, pleading guilty, but only having to do a 7-month house arrest. So he was stuck in his house for 7 months, so what was he doing? He was playing the guitar. He couldn't get any drummers, couldn't leave the house, so he bought a drum machine. Started playing with it, and as he was playing, he was realizing, oh, wait a minute, every time I want to change to another part, I gotta stop, I gotta go down. So he came up with the idea of the Beat Buddy. He wrote a patent, he Googled, got a book on it, did all of these things, and then built up, to the point where he was able to start a crowdfunding campaign on this. So why don't you talk a little bit about the crowdfunding campaign, and then from there, I want to just talk to Jeff a little bit more about what's involved in raising money, because obviously you have to get parts, there's supply chain management, there's shipping, there's a lot of things to build up the complexity of this company. So talk a little bit about how you raise money for this thing, being at home under house arrest.
Yeah, so it was an interesting experience, of course. First of all, I have to say I'd never done this business before. I've always been an entrepreneur. I mean, ever since I was like 6 years old, I had like little hustles, but I'd never developed a product before, definitely not a technology product, which is not a simple thing to do. And so I had to learn everything as I went. I was looking for all these engineers. I didn't even know what kind of engineers you needed to do this. I learned that there's different types of engineers. There's the electrical engineers who design the PCB boards. There's the firmware engineers who make the software. There's the mechanical engineers who do the actual body, the physical device. Then you have software engineers if you have software on your computer. So these are all different specialties, and they can't do each other's jobs. And you need to find good ones if you're going to do this. And the only way you're going to find them is Google. And you just Google and you tell them what you want to do. You send them your little sketch and the description of how you want it to work. And then you get a bunch of different quotes. And you have no idea who's good and who's bad. And so, my tendency was, of course, to go with the cheapest one. Big mistake. I ended up going, that cost me more money than I saved.
There's a saying I like to say, cheap is expensive. So whenever you're going to get products or services or professionals, the cheapest ends up costing you the most because you have to throw out the work they did and then hire someone who was a little bit more, but was better to begin with.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I wasted 9 months and a little bit of money. I got most of my money back, but not all of it, you know. And eventually, I realized that the guys you should hire are the guys that seem to know what they're talking about, right? So I ended up hiring the guys who gave me the longest quote, you know, the longest proposal, where they broke every step of the process down into little sub-steps, little estimates of like how much time each thing would take, what specialty was needed for that particular part of the project. And they weren't the most expensive. They were actually less than half the cost of the most expensive ones. So the most expensive aren't necessarily the best. And you know, just to give you a range, the cheapest was 10 times cheaper than the most expensive. So there's a massive range. Eventually, I got guys that I thought could do it, but I didn't have even close to the money to do this. All the money I made from arms dealing was spent on lawyers. That's why Leslie is so rich, because he's a lawyer. You know.
I do deals. I do entertainment deals.
No, it's a very different kind of lawyer. Didn't mean to insult you, Leslie.
I'm not the get out of jail free.
No, you're definitely not. But yeah, you deal in nicer situations. It's a more pleasant law work. But
he is my attorney, and I can tell you he does quite well.
Yeah, yes, there you go. Exactly. He's good. He deserves it. So I didn't have the money, you know. So I had like 10% of what I needed to actually do the engineering on this. And I was really lucky in this that the company that I wanted to use, their lead engineer was a drummer. And as soon as I showed him this product, he was like, "Oh, this is perfect. All my friends are always asking me to jam with them, and I don't have any time to jam with them, so they're gonna love this thing." So he knew that the product, you know, filled a need in the market. And so he felt comfortable making me a deal that they never made anyone else, which was that I would give them like a 10% deposit, which is extremely small, and they would build a working prototype that I could then take to a crowdfunding campaign and hopefully raise the rest of the money. But if I didn't, they were going to do the manufacturing for me and take a percentage of the profits until I could pay them for all the engineering work that they did. Then I would own the engineering files. So we did that, and while preparing for the crowdfunding campaign, which is, you know, kind of a make or break situation for most entrepreneurs, because even if you go to a guy, you know, like Jeff and say, "Hey, give me money," right? He's going to be like, you know, "Well, how do you know the market really wants your product?" You know, and so a crowdfunding campaign is a great way to prove that that there's a market for the product. So it's a really important thing. If you're gonna do a crowdfunding campaign, you want it to succeed, not just to raise the money, but to prove it to the world, to the retailers, the distributors, that there is a market for the product. So what I did to prepare for that was I created a demo video of how the product worked. Now, I didn't have a working prototype right now, right? They were still building it. So we made a mock-up, you know, something that looked like the final version, and we shot a video making it look like it worked. And by the way, all the big tech companies do this, okay? You know, you ever see like advertisement for games? They're like in tiny little letters, it says not actual gameplay, right? So made a mock-up video, and before I could even publish it on YouTube, it was like an unlisted video. Someone, I guess, Googled for something, you know, like drum machine pedal, and they found it, and they posted it on one of the guitar forums, and then I got flooded with emails of people signing up, wanting to sign up to the mailing list. So that was a really good sign that even before I launched the video, people were like beating down my door to find out when they could get it.
So let me just interject for a second here, because anyone who is, you know, wants to create an app, create a product, the thing that you really need to do is you need to provide, you know, a product or service that solves a problem. And here, David clearly found the problem. You can't always get a drummer, and you can't, you know, do it on the fly when you're playing on stage. So that was, you know, one of the things that appealed to the people and started to develop that market and that demand.
Exactly. Yeah, because, you know, most musicians, like 98% of the time, most people 100% of the time, but even the ones who do play in bands, most of the time you're playing by yourself, you know, at home. And, you know, your drummer's not coming over with his drum set, you know, even if you have one, which, you know, a lot of us don't. So there was a very big demand for it, which is why I was personally shocked when I when I thought I needed this, and I'm like, someone for sure makes it. So like I went online and Googled, and like nobody made it. And I was even more shocked when I did a patent search and nobody even patented the idea. So I was really surprised. But you know, it should just be a lesson that just because an idea is obvious doesn't mean that anyone has done it before. You know, someone is always first. And even if other people have thought of it, most of them are never going to do anything about it. You know, it's there. I think I read somewhere that statistically, because there's like 7 billion people on the planet, any idea that is thought of is usually on average thought of around 200 to 300 times around the world. But almost nobody ever does anything about it for whatever reason. You know, you're too busy, not enough money, just not enough motivation, you know. Back to the crowdfunding campaign, I spent 6 months before the campaign trying to get people to sign up to the mailing list, because with crowdfunding campaigns, the most important thing is that initial launch. Because if you launch big, then the platform itself, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, they're going to promote you, and then journalists take notice of you. People want to write about success, so journalists, if they see, you know, there's thousands of crowdfunding campaigns being launched all the time, and they have to pick which ones they're going to write about, and everyone is most excited about success. So you need to have a big splash when you launch. So the most important thing you can do when launching a crowdfunding campaign is to have a built-in, ready-to-go audience that can't wait to contribute to your campaign, so you get that initial bump. So I spent 6 months before the launch of the campaign promoting the mock-up video we made, promoting the website, spent a little bit of money on ads, not that much money actually, but it was enough to convert around 3,000 people to our mailing list, and by the time we launched, 500 of them bought like immediately, so we raised $80,000 in the first day. And by the time we completed the campaign, we raised $350,000.
And that was enough to
Yes,
finance your first
exactly.
run, and you even had a profit at that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was enough to pay off the engineers who were holding my engineering files hostage, and also to get the first production run going. And just anyone who gets into the hardware manufacturing business, you guys should just know that whatever you think is going to take you, however long you think it's going to take you to manufacture something, just triple it. Because, you know, hardware in particular, there is always something wrong. And you have to be in the factory for that first production run. Because otherwise, you know, it's going to take you 10 times as long, because you're going to have to ship it back and forth, and then there's misunderstandings and everything. So I went to China when we first did our first production run for the Beat Buddy. I was expecting to stay there a month. I ended up staying there 3 months. And, but we ended up delivering, and people loved it. We won pretty much every major award in the musical products industry, so it was worth it.
Congratulations! What a success
Leslie.
story, and
Thank you.
And here from Miami as well. So here you see, you know, a very unique way to get into the music technology business. A very, very successful company. Obviously starts with a great idea, a great product, great execution, innovation, a lot of hustle.
Yeah.
You know, as all musicians do. And, you know, it is now, you know, an award-winning product that's featured at NAMM, and lots of folks are using it. So with that in mind, as we talk about the ecosystem of music technology companies and so forth, I wanted to turn it over to Jeff to talk a little bit about what he does. So Jeff's company, Rocker Fuel, has a $200 million fund, and they invest in all sorts of tech startups, including some music startups. Last year, he injected approximately $40 million into the Miami economy, funding technology companies that are based here in Miami. So he's a very significant player in terms of, you know, building the technology ecosystem in Miami. Has a great story to tell. And Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the other music startups that you've worked on, and how they contrast with David's approach with crowdfunding, and, you know, what are some of the similarities and differences of those approaches?
Well, the first thing that I'm going to say is what David did is absolutely outstanding. I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm like, I'm going to be out of business here pretty soon if this keeps up. Because really, you know, what David did, he raised $350,000 with his campaign, and he didn't have to give up any of his equity to somebody like me. He doesn't have to deal with the bullshit that I'm going to ask him to do if I'm going to give him money.
You're a nice guy, Jeff. Come on.
I am a nice guy.
Yeah, no, but he's very tough. Trust me.
I am a nice
believe
guy.
it.
I mean, one of our mantras is we're investor driven, but we're founder focused. if you think about venture capital from Silicon Valley, my humble opinion is I think that in some ways they've kind of lost, the true reason why people like me get into this business, and that is, it's because of the founder. It's because of someone like David who, couldn't go outside for months at a time and was bored and realized that, hey, there's something better here. I mean, that there's a gap in the business and somebody needs to create it, and he had the courage to do it. And there's a lot of different private equity firms that are focused on different things. We're portfolio managers. I focus on exponential technologies. So I'm looking for companies that, for whatever reason, are they're utilizing technology which allows their business to exponentially grow. You think about Airbnb. Everybody knows what Airbnb is, but Airbnb doesn't own anything. If you compare it to Hyatt, for example, Hyatt has millions upon millions upon millions of dollars wrapped up in buildings. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. There's a tremendous amount of overhead. And it took Hyatt 60 years to get to $1 billion valuation. And it took Hyatt 6 years to get to the exact same valuation.
Airbnb, you mean?
Airbnb. I'm sorry. So I was upstairs drinking beer before this started. I'm kidding. Actually, I'm not. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different private equity firms. But what I will say is that I really do believe that this is an incredible way to get something going, and it is a great way to proof source your idea to the end consumer. I think it's phenomenal. You raise $350,000 with really nothing other than showcasing your product. But when you get to a certain point, and most companies do, especially technology companies, when you really want to get to big scale, sometimes you need to bring in institutional money, because as Leslie said, we have $224 million to invest in companies, and it's not a tremendous amount of money, but it's also not a small amount of money. But here's what every entrepreneur has to understand when you finally do face off with someone like myself, and that is that the world is going to change. David can do whatever David wants to do. It's his company. He owns 100% of the equity. If he wants to paint the Beat Buddy purple, he can do that. He sits down with someone like me, and I might say, I don't think that the end consumer likes, purple, and so I don't think that you should do that. And I might actually put tremendous pressure on him to go against his artistic style and what he thinks is going to win, but he has to kind of go along with me now because I'm the one that's giving him the money to move forward. And that's a psychological thing that every entrepreneur has to really kind of understand, that when you do get to the institutional level that you want to bring institutional money, things just change a little bit. And the reason for that is it's not that anybody's trying to be difficult or an asshole or anything else. It's just that people like me have a fiduciary responsibility to our investors. At the end of the day, I have to face off with those investors, and they're investing in me and they're entrusting in me to do the right thing with their money. And so I've got to make sure that David is pushing forward with returns, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes that just gets into a little bit of a discomfort, if you will, as any marriage would, right? So I just think that, it can become very interesting. I do think that how David has started off is extremely important if you can do that. And then, eventually getting to sit down with someone like me, depending on where you want to take your company and how big you want your company to be, is also extremely important. There's really no way to do it other than doing that. But I think the big point that I want to make is life changes at that point, and you just have to understand that.
So what we see here is there's pressures from a lot of different areas. So David, as the founder, as the inventor, has pressures to make the best product possible. He's got production issues. He's going to China. He's finding out that the knobs don't work in the right way, or the interface doesn't work. So he has a lot of these pressures to make the product great, to create something that consumers are going to want to buy and they're going to be satisfied, and then doing the updates. And then in the case of Jeff, who is financing a lot of these ventures, he has a lot of pressure from the investors. They're putting millions of dollars investing with him, saying, you go and pick the winners, and he's got to go and pick the winners. How does he do that? He has to do a lot of diligence. He has to be involved with his founders. He's going to go to his founders, and it's a matter of judgment at the end of the day. It's very easy to look backwards to connect the dots to success and see how it worked. You know, you can go and say, well, they did this turn, they did this, and this is how they got there. Seems logical, but when you're in the middle of it and looking forward, you can't connect the dots. There's a lot of trial and error and so forth. So, you know, Jeff has that pressure, David has that pressure. You know, I myself am in the middle making the deals at the beginning to try to mitigate that and create scenarios. Again, we're all trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future, and none of us, you know, can look into the future and don't have crystal balls. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to see if anybody has any questions out there that we can go and answer. If anyone's, you know, an inventor, investor, whatever the case may be, and we can take it from there. Yes, sir.
David, you had a patent, but what concerns do you have about any competition when you release your product?
So the question was, you know, David had a patent, but what concerns did he have about potential competition in creating this product?
So a patent is really just an insurance policy. It's not a guarantee of anything, you know. Patents will generally keep out smaller competitors from trying to rip you off, and it may scare off some larger competitors, but it's not a guarantee that they're gonna respect your patent. Right now, I'm actually going through this issue where Boss, Roland, you guys may have heard of him, you know, they created a product that pretty much rips off almost the Beat Buddy almost exactly. You know, it's called the RC10R. It rips it off badly, luckily for me, and the customers, you know, when they first launched it, we saw our Beat Buddy sales decrease by half for 2 months, and then after 2 months they bounced right back, and now there's no difference from before they launched it. And we think that was because people got excited, they bought it, they realized it was garbage, and then, you know, they continued to buy our product.
Did they price it less expensive than yours?
It's the same price. They priced it the same, yeah. But they are very obviously violating our patent, and, you know, we are faced with the decision: do we want to take them to court? You know, now they're a multi-billion-dollar company. You know, if we tried to finance a lawsuit against them ourselves, we'd probably go bankrupt before we could ever win. But there are other options. You know, I was actually talking about this with Jeff. He does a bit of finance,
litigation finance.
Litigation finance. That was the word I was looking for. Where you can get an investor and they'll say, okay, I'll take X number of the return on the lawsuit and I'll pay for the lawsuit. So there are options to protect your patent, but it's definitely by no means a guarantee. You know, a patent just puts up a barrier. It's not a guarantee. But you don't need a patent to go into business. You know, there are plenty of products that you could make a lot of money that are just not patentable. And as long as you get there first and you market it hard, you could build the brand, and people associate, even if you have competitors, people associate, you know, this type of product with it's like Kleenex, right? People say, pass me a Kleenex. You know, that's a brand. You know, it's not. They don't say a tissue because they hit the market so hard and for so early that everyone associates that. Or like even when people, they may take a Lyft, but they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to get an Uber." You know, because you know the brand is so strong in people's minds.
Or Xerox that document for me.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of different cases where you could build your brand without even a patent, as long as you market it well enough. You could build up in the market almost kind of like a monopoly, but more in people's minds than in the legality. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
You said after your first production round, you were immediately profitable. Was that margin sustained, or did you see it kind of continue to invest in R&D after that, or what that?
So the question is, I mentioned that you know, David was profitable after the first production round, and the question was, did he sustain his margin or his profitability, or did he invest that back into R&D, and how did the company evolve?
So I am actually a very cash poor person. On paper, I'm rich, but in my bank account, not that much in it. And that's because all the money that I've made from my company, I put into R&D, into creating these new products. This looper that I showed you guys, that cost almost $1 million to develop. You know, So yeah, if I didn't develop it, I'd have $1 million in the bank, but then I wouldn't have this product to continue growing my company. So it is always a debate amongst founders, amongst business people about what you should do with your money. You could milk the one product you have and just stow the money in the bank or do whatever you want with it, or you could take all that money and put it into developing other products. Now that's always a challenge because you kind of have to. If you bite off more than you could chew, then you don't have enough products enough money to sustain your business. If I put too much money into R&D on the looper, I may not have enough money to pay for the next production run of the Beat Buddy, and in which case I have no Beat Buddies to sell, I have no more revenue coming in, I can't continue R&D on the looper, and then the whole thing blows up. Then I have to go to Jeff and beg him for money, and he's gonna not give me a good deal, right? because I'll be in a bad situation.
I would give you a good deal, though.
Maybe me, but not you guys. But so it is, and we launched the Beat Buddy 6 years ago, and it's been rough the whole time, I have to say, because we didn't take funding. I'd be able to sleep a lot better at night if I had gotten a whole bunch of funding, but that as Jeff was saying, it comes with its own issues.
There's certainly cost to that.
You pick your problems.
And certainly necessity breeds the mother of invention, which as we've seen here. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I wanted to thank everyone for coming and just kind of highlight the fact of, it is so challenging to start a company, and hats off to David, a musician who took a problem, found a solution, really dug in, and it's a testament, I think, to all of us who are musicians and in this space. And if you have any questions, you can come up to us afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Leslie.